We got to talk about this offensive line because the Pittsburgh Steelers have a guard problem. We'll talk about what that problem is, what the answer might be, and we'll also talk about why the Steelers shouldn't trade away Mason Rudolph just yet. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content like we did for this weekend for the Steelers Saturday preseason game. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, we did a mini breakdown, not a mini breakdown, I did basically a full show, but we did a show breaking down just my thoughts on how this second preseason game went. There were some good things from the quarterbacks, really all around with the quarterbacks, some rough things with the offensive line. We talked about the linebackers. We're going to address a few of these things, but I want to lead with the offensive line again. I got a chance. I woke up Sunday morning, and I was able to fully watch the game over again and kind of know what I'm looking for. Because when you're watching it live, there's too many players to notice every detail. But, man, what I saw from the offensive line, there were some points of, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought. But then the other points were like, oh, this was worse than I thought. What do I mean by that? First of all, I want to point out, a lot of the Steelers' offensive line problems can be described as popcorn. You'll hear this phrase used by Mike Tomlin and lots of other coaches out there. And when you hear someone say the problems are like popcorn, especially for an offensive line, it means that it's not coming from just one direction. It's coming from kind of everybody at just the wrong moments. It's just this pops up over here, this pops up over there. And it's inconsistent with who's becoming the problem. You know, one play, the rest of the Steelers' offensive line blocked a pitch out wide for Benny Snell very well, and Chukuma Okorafor missed his man on the edge. And if he had just sealed his man to the inside, Benny Snell would have had an entire sideline to run for. And I know someone's going to say, well, he couldn't have made it there anyways. Benny Snell could have made it to the sideline with the way the rest of the Steelers' offensive line worked on that play. There were other plays where the entire offense, one of the pressures that was given up on Mitch that made Trubisky escape the pocket. The entire offensive line does a good job, except for Dan Moore Jr. And you just see him getting ridden to the backfield by Josh Allen. That's tough, and it's kind of like that where everybody just made everyone but one person made was good, and that one mistake crushed it. But I will say specifically when I looked back and I was just looking at how it played out. Consistently, it came the most from the guard positions. And I say positions because it's not just Kendrick Green, it's also James Daniels. And I talked about James Daniels a bit on the first show that we did for Sunday. But, man, Kendrick Green, there's times that he looked unusable in his snaps. And that's not me, I'm not out here trumpeting and saying like, oh, this guy stinks, get him off the team. But it's to the point where it's like with some of the reps that he had, it's like it makes you wonder, like, can you function as an offensive line with him playing that way? And I mean this because there were some reps where like it wasn't like he lost it, but it's a good thing the play wasn't going in his direction where he was engaged with this man. It's just that the terms of his engagement was that he was being ridden 5 yards into the backfield, and it's just thank goodness that the quarterback was going the other way. Otherwise, that would have been disastrous. There were some reps where there was one rep in particular where I noticed his interior man, and it's just a simple pass rush rep. Just come out of your stance, pop, use your hands, keep that guy at a distance. Don't let him just cross your face. And not only did he come up out of his stance and miss with his hands, his feet never move, and the guy just walks right by him. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, man, that's one of the worst reps I've seen. And it last year, you gave the courtesy of, hey, new position at center, give him time, let him learn it out. That's gone. He's back in his familiar position of guard. These mistakes shouldn't be happening. And I know Kendrick Green's a shorter guy. He's listed on the team website as 6'4". He is not 6'4". He's like more like 6'1", I think. But he doesn't have the long arms that a lot of offensive linemen do to kind of keep a defender at bay. And that's fine. But there's smaller guards, there's smaller offensive linemen out there who make up for that with effort and technique and doing all the little things right. He's not even doing the little things right. And that's the big problem with Kendrick Green. And I honestly believe the only reason it's really right now a 50-50 battle between him and Kevin Dotson at the left guard position is simply because Kevin Dotson has not been healthy. He was hurt for much of last year. He's been hurt on and off for camp. And it hasn't been great. But I will say, when PFF went back and they charted all the plays and everything, Kevin Dotson played 23 snaps. 14 of those were plays where he was in pass protection and gave up not a single pressure during them. There was nothing that came from his gap. They didn't give him a great run blocking grade, but all in all, he has the frame of being 6'4". He's on that higher end. He has the frame to engage guys, and he has those basic parts, and you're not questioning that part of his game. He at least is making contact with these guys. So maybe Kevin Dotson's an answer there, but unless Kendrick Green does a magic turnaround in this final week of the preseason, it makes me think the Steelers should not be looking to make him the day one starter at that position. And I know that that's a concern for some people, because if you look at Kevin Dotson and his ankle injury history, it's not all that reliable to say, man, he's just going to play 17 games and they'll be fine at the position. And the other thing is that James Daniels, I almost called JC Daniels. James Daniels isn't playing that great either. In fact, he's playing poorly. It'd be fine if he was kind of holding down the fort, but he's like not even the best offensive lineman. And I said this on Sunday's show, but I mean, this was the guy who I asked down the line: Dan Moore Jr., Mason Cole, Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson, Jacouma Okorafor, everybody. And everyone said, yeah, James Daniels is the leader of the group right now. If he's your leader, that's not a good sign. And maybe he's a leader because of experience, because he was good at Chicago and all that. But he's been looking rough, and he was getting beat. He was not getting to his spot consistently. There were times that he won his position a lot more than Kendrick Green. Like if that's just the baseline, if that's the bottom, if that's the worst game that James Daniels performs, you can grow from that. You can work from that. You'll be fine. But what Kendrick Green put up it has to be his worst game ever. Like if he goes worse than that ever, I don't know what would, like, Mitch Trubisky or whoever's playing at quarterback will need to file life insurance, because it was that bad with how he played. And this is where the Steelers have to ask themselves, do they need to go get another player out there? And everyone's making the obvious question: what about JC Tretter? Former Browns interior offensive lineman. He's 31 years old, so that's a little older than they normally like to go. But this is looking to the point of being an emergency, that, hey, you need a starting caliber left guard. Or if Kevin Dotson is your starting caliber left guard and he goes down, you need someone to go there immediately. And Mason Cole's a guy. He could play center and guard. He's a guy that can do that. They haven't asked him to do that much in camp, but he's a guy who has experience at different spots. But man, the Steelers need some sort of answer at the guard position. Otherwise, this is going to be a rough offensive line moving forward. And here's the thing: again, Dan Moore Jr., he got whooped, but look at those tackles and look who they were up against this weekend. Josh Allen was a top 10 pick for the Jaguars, and I think will be one of the best edge rushers in the NFL for the next few years. They had the number 1 overall pick against Travon Walker. Their number 3 edge rusher was Trevon Chasen. Chasen was a guy who was looked at like he's going to be he was looked at in the way that Bud Dupree was looked at when he first came to the Steelers, and everyone hoping that he would become what TJ Watt is now. And he's their 3rd guy. So when Josh Allen was ragdolling Dan Moore Jr. some plays, I'm like, hey, that happens. And there were some good reps for Dan Moore Jr. I thought there were times he fought back, but ultimately he lost a lot of those battles. Jacouma Okorafor did a better job against Travon Walker, but still there were some. They're like, oh wow, that's first overall pick strength right there. Kind of like what the Steelers go up against when they do with Myles Garrett. But you could tolerate them because you saw there was competency, there was fight there. There was not a lot of competency from Kendrick Green. There was not what Mike Tomlin would call varsity play, and that should be alarming to a lot of Steelers fans. And that should also be saying, Omar Khan, is it time to pick up the phone and look at some guards? Maybe. But what it's not time to do, pick up the phone and do, is trade Mason Rudolph. I know that's an odd transition, but it's something that I got to harp on because I'm hearing it way too much in the media, and I think it needs to be piped down. I'll explain why in just a minute here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about betonline.net. Betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Follow the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball season and all the preseason bets you need to get ready for the NFL season. Who's gonna be your award winners? Who's gonna win which divisions? All those bets and betting lines can be found at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn about the trends in the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. I want to talk about Mason Rudolph for a minute here, because some people think that just because they don't like Mason Rudolph, or because they think that he's the one, it's obvious he's not the starter in this team. I don't care what happens. Some crazy things could happen, but it would take a lot for me to say that Mason Rudolph should start over Mitch Trubisky at this point. And honestly, the way Kenny Pickett's playing, it's tough to say that he should start over Kenny Pickett just yet. Now, I will say that Kenny Pickett is not the QB1. I know there's a lot of people that want to hype it up, and I'm like, hey, look at the process. Look at how Mike Tomlin's handling the situation. First game, a lot of snaps against the second and third team of the Seahawks. Last game, a few snaps, 2 drives against the first team of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's weaning him in. He's taking his time, making sure his development, giving him the proper sample size. If for some reason Kenny Pickett plays a lot against the first team, of the Lions on this upcoming weekend, and he lights it up, we'll have a discussion then. But I think that what they're going to do is they're going to put him against second and third team in that game, let him run a little bit more, get more of a full quarter in against those guys, and then we'll see where we're talking about with Kenny Pickett. But for Mason Rudolph, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, he's the least mobile of the 3. He has the lowest pedigree. The other guys are definite first-round picks. I know there's the old thing that Kevin Colbert thought that he was first-round caliber, but he was picked in the 3rd round, and so he is first-round caliber, whatever, all that nonsense. Mason Rudolph is not a first-round quarterback. He's a 3rd-round quarterback. So get that out of your mind. Stop saying that nonsense. I'm tired of hearing it. But that does not mean that he is no value to this team, especially when you see that there are the 2 quarterbacks. And I know there's some people out there that are thinking, well, Chris, they got 2 quarterbacks. Why do they need a 3rd? The 3rd quarterback's usually like the young guy that you just want to learn. That's what Kenny Pickett was going to be. You don't need that. That can be Chris Oladikin, and you could put him back there and just let him be. No. The Steelers are not going to go through 2019 again. And I truly believe that a lot of what is happening is just them saying we are not going to be back where we were in 2019 again. That's why, even if the unfortunate passing of Dwayne Haskins didn't happen, the only thing is they wouldn't have drafted Chris Oladikin. The order would be right now. It would be Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins. Heck, Dwayne Haskins might be stealing some more of the reps from Kenny Pickett in his progression there. But they wanted 3 real arms, and with Dwayne Haskins, they were hoping to have a 4th, experienced NFL arm to throw into camp, because they wanted to be in the position where if somebody goes down to injury, if 2 guys go down to injury, they're not handicapped, and they're not just saying, oh gosh, we have nothing that we can work with on offense. They don't want to be where they were with Devlin Hodges 3 years ago. And again, credit to Devlin for the effort that he put in, but there's a reason that the man is not in the league anymore. And it shows how even more remarkable it is that they won 8 games that season with him and Mason Rudolph a starter for each one of those 8 wins. They don't want to be back there. And Mason Rudolph prevents them from going back to there, because Mason Rudolph is a better player than he was 3 years ago. He does see the field better. Not great. I think he still has problems going to a 3rd option. I think he's gotten a 2nd option into his repertoire more consistently. He's not a guy that you want as your long-term starter right now, but he knows your playbook. He knows your players. He has a good NFL arm. He can get the ball down the field. He also is young enough to be athletic. He's not Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett mobile, but he is able to escape and take yards that are right in front of him. He gets the basics done. This was why he was brought back in the first place, was that they wanted a guy who could be the baseline of what to expect from the quarterback position. And he is that right now. If Kenny Pickett was stinking, you would at least be able to say, oh, wow, okay, the Steelers blew that pick. Or well, maybe he'll work down a few years down the road, but he's not it now. Good thing they got Mason Rudolph. That's what he was the insurance for if Mitch and Kenny weren't it, you know what? They at least had that guy that they've won some games with that they could throw out there. But they don't have that situation right now. I think Mitch Trubisky's actually looked good. I think Kenny Pickett has passed every test you've thrown his way in these games. And in fact, Robert Griffin III, former NFL quarterback, current college analyst, he put out, he's like, Kenny Pickett could start day one. And I said, I'm not saying that he couldn't, but I'm saying Mike Tomlin's going to have a system of checks and balances to make sure that Kenny Pickett, like I said, you play a little bit longer against the third and second string guys. Check. Played a very small sample against the first string guys. Check. Now let's see how he does with this test. And there's probably two or three more tests he wants to use before Kenny Pickett becomes your full-time starter. But Mike Tomlin's going to make sure he earns that spot there, not just because he's trying to protect him, but also because of deference and how in respect of the organization. And if a team sees that a rookie quarterback can come in, throw a couple preseason passes and just be, oh, I'm a starter, that takes a chunk at the integrity. It makes people ask some questions. And then if he starts to play poorly, then there's morale issues. And then there's questions. Oh, did they bring him up too soon? He's going to make him earn this. There's no question. It's like, hey, we had him go through every step. If he's messing up, it's just part of the process. So while you're doing all that, this is why you don't trade Mason Rudolph. Another point here is that don't forget that for years, when Ben Roethlisberger would have those 5 and 4 interception games that he would have, and you'd be sitting there like, oh man, Ben is really messing up here. And then afterwards he'll say, oh, maybe I need to retire soon or something like that. Whenever Ben had those games, you know what the Steelers did? They left him in there. You know why? Because he was a proven Super Bowl champion franchise quarterback. 2-time Super Bowl champion, by the way. He has the leash. He has the respect. The same thing goes for players like Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, all them guys. You're not pulling them. You're letting them figure it out. Let me tell you who doesn't have that leash. Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. Either one of those guys are young enough to say if it's just a rough game for them, maybe it's just not your day. It'll be like a pitcher in baseball. Mike Tomlin will come and say, hey, man, not your day. We're gonna try this guy for that. Don't take it on your pride. Just know we got to win this football game. And we're gonna see if this guy can figure it out. We're gonna study it in the film room. We'll get back at it next week. Now, when he's your established, super paid $100 million franchise quarterback, that's a little bit different. And then there's mixed messaging, and you're not so sure how that's gonna play out. But none of these guys are that right now. So you have an opportunity for, say, just for whatever reason, this one player's speed is just not working for this game. And all of a sudden, another guy comes in and things work out. It's what helped the Steelers make the playoffs back in 2002. I know I'm really dating myself by bringing up 2002. But if you remember that season, Cordell Stewart couldn't, just early on in the season was not figuring out. Teams were just backing off in coverage, letting him stay in the pocket, and they were just picking him off because that was not his game. Tommy Maddox comes in, lights it up. People are backing off him and covers the same way, and they're like, man, he's just tearing us apart. But as soon as teams realize, wait a second, Tommy Maddox is terrible against the blitz, they started blitzing him, and then Tommy Maddox, that's when you saw the real Tommy Maddox come out, and that, when the team actually plans for him, he's in trouble. But what happened after that? Tommy Maddox got hurt at one point. Cordell Stewart came back in, played better, because teams didn't adjust back to playing him. And it was just a situation where Steelers could play one or the other, and it got them certain advantages. Now, granted, the stark contrast between Tommy Maddox's statuesque, can't move in the pocket but can throw the ball anywhere style of play, and Cordell Stewart's can run all over the place but isn't the most accurate thrower. That's not the contrast we're dealing with here. But there's still things that quarterbacks are going to see. This football is a game with a billion plays a year and a million moments where you have to make these small little decisions, and the smallest decision can lead to success or failure in a moment, especially at the quarterback position. And sometimes the series of decisions you're making, you're just stuck. You can't see through it, and you're seeing ghosts. You just need a break. And that's where Mason Rudolph comes in, where, say, Mitch Trubisky gets hurt and Kenny Pickett becomes the starter. And everyone's excited for Kenny Pickett. Maybe for 2 games, Kenny Pickett lights it up. But then somebody sees something on tape, like a Bill Belichick. Well, they play him second game of the season. It wouldn't happen then. But say, John Harbaugh, they see something on Kenny Pickett's tape, like, ooh, this is going to confuse him. And it does confuse him. And you're late in the third quarter. Kenny Pickett's got 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, and is not moving the ball. And you need an answer. You say, Kenny, sit down. You're a rookie. We'll work at this. Mason, get in there and help us. That's where he's worth it. And if you're sitting here saying, but Chris, what is that worth versus a 3rd or 4th round pick? I'm sorry. Did you think you could get a 3rd or 4th round pick for Mason Rudolph right now? Did you not see what Baker Mayfield just went for? A 5th round pick like in 2 years or some stuff like that? Mason ain't going to get that. He's a backup quarterback. Everyone knows he's a backup quarterback. Now, I will say the biggest thing that Mason has on the side versus a Baker Mayfield is that he's not. We don't know Mason's middle name. Someone I'm sure does. But my point is, Baker, when the Deshaun Watson situation happened, again, when the Cleveland Browns just inquired about Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield took it as an affront and a disrespect, and he was Baker Reagan Mayfield. Mason Rudolph has been knocked out, knocked around, said he used a slur, all this other stuff. He's been disrespected, he's been booed. He's been, as soon as he thought he had a chance to be the starting quarterback, they signed Mitch Trubisky and drafted Kenny Pickett. Mason Rudolph called both of those guys the next day after they got those opportunities with the Steelers, knowing that they were his competition and most likely replacement, and said, "Congratulations, I'm excited to work with you. Let's get to work." And there has been no inkling by any reporter anywhere at Steelers camp. I know I was there day in and day out, sweating, getting this current tan that I'm getting rid of soon because it was really hot out there. We were there all the time at St. Vincent College. There was no inkling that Mason Rudolph had a problem with either of the quarterbacks or that the quarterbacks had a problem with him. This is a guy that made no fuss. And so I do agree. If you're sitting there saying, well, maybe someone wants him because he seems like he's such a team player, maybe that's that. But I'm telling you, if they get a 3rd or 4th round pick for him, I will be shocked. And if it is, maybe it's 3 years down the line. But I truly think with Mason Rudolph, you need a break in glass in case of emergency situation. And I think that is worth more than a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick that you might get on the trade market for him right now. And who knows, maybe he throws 4 touchdowns in this next preseason game and then you get that 3rd round pick. If that happens, okay, different story. I'm just Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast, and I'm telling you, it's not likely. And the value of having that breaking glass in case of emergency quarterback, it's important. And there's been plenty of times in Mike Tomlin's years that quarterback has saved them a game or two. Charlie Batch used to be that. Byron Leftwich used to be that. When they were the Ben Roethlisberger Steelers during even the Super Bowl years, there's times they came in, played key games, and just held down the fort to get key wins that helped them build their season. That's worth more than a super late day 3 pick. And that's why the Steelers shouldn't and won't trade Mason Rudolph. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about other players on defense that I was a little harsher on, that I look back on. I think they actually played better than what they appear. We'll talk about that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we have to give you a message from one of our sponsors, the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. You're hanging out with some friends and you're putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many, and as the evening comes to an end, people start to head out. You think of calling for a ride, but nah, you live nearby. You can make it home, okay? It's no big deal. What are the odds that you're going to get pulled over anyway, right? Even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Those are a lot of risks there, and very real ones that you don't realize until it's too late. Everyone knows the risks about driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe, plan ahead, get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter, and I want to go over some things that I did see in my rewatch of the game. Now, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Sunday, I did take some time in the morning to watch the game in full and know what I was sort of looking for, and I got to see some things that I didn't pick up on. I talked about how I saw it with the offensive line, but I will say this. Robert Spillane had a better game than most people gave him credit for. A lot of people, I think, just naturally tweet things or say things or give certain evaluations because they're just like they're used to so-and-so sucking. When you see me give an evaluation, it's an in the moment. I see this. I saw this is tangible. This isn't me pulling this out of the back of my head and saying, oh, I remember this guy stunk. I'm just going to say this to sound smart. This is me saying I saw this play, this moment, this relates to this, and this is why I think this. I stay factual. That's I live in the fact. I don't make up things. I don't do that. That's just I can't operate that way. And Robert Spillane, the more I look back on it, actually had some really good moments. The times that he was challenged in the passing game, he was at least in the area. There were a couple times he did give up catches, but he was right there to tackle the guy. And that's all you really need from Robert Spillane. You're not looking for him to be some supreme cover man, but he was in the area bringing guys down. And there were a couple times in the run game, he led the team with 7 tackles, where I thought he was aggressive enough to make the play. And there was one play in particular where the Steelers' defensive front kind of was able to give him an opportunity to slide through, and he made a heck of a play. There was a play, in fact, Derek Tuska sealed the edge, forced the running back inside, and Spillane cut right to it as Miles Jack was getting blocked and made the play happen. And that's what you need from your linebackers. When if one of them is free, the one who's free has to make the play on the run game. And Spillane did that more often in this game, and that's a good sign. I'll also say Devin Bush had a better game than I thought he did. Now, he still wasn't the 10th overall pick player that they selected him to be. He's not still star Devin Bush that would fix the defense. But he made 4 tackles in this game, and he was at least looked like he was processing things a little better. He's still flat-footed, still got to get those things. He still has to get back to being the aggressive Devin Bush that I saw in his first year and a half. But that was at least better. I'll also say Mark Robinson. Everyone saw his big hit because in the late in the fourth quarter he drilled somebody, and I was like, ooh, it was a nasty hit. But he was making some solid plays, and he looks like he's figuring things out. Brian Baldinger, one of the NFL analysts that I respect the most. I love his Baldy's breakdowns. I live for those. That's the way that he breaks down the game of football is the way I love to do Carter's Classroom. So understand this is not. This is not coming out of nowhere. I respect the heck out of him. But he broke down a play where Mark Robinson saw the pulling guard, processed the play, followed the pulling guard, and attacked the hole. That follow the guard is one of the most basic, fundamental things of football that linebackers need to do. Not enough of them do it, and the ones that do often make more plays. And Mark Robinson did it, and it led to him getting a good tackle on this play. He finished this game with 5 tackles, tied for second most in the game. I thought he had a good one. But I also noticed towards the end of the game, late in the fourth quarter, the Jaguars are driving, trying to finish, get a score and put the game out of reach. And Mark Robinson blitzes up B gap. And his blitz scares the tackle off of his man to try and pick him up. And that blitz freed up, I believe it was Hamilcar Rashed. And that led to the bad pass that got to Justin Lane, and which gave Mason Rudolph the chance to have the game-winning touchdown drive at the end of the game. It's a good rep. And that's now a second game in a row where his pass rush has led to a turnover. And a turnover that set up the Steelers for a game-winning score. Doesn't mean he's ready to start right now, but good signs for a 7th-round pick out of Ole Miss that just started playing linebacker a couple years ago because he was a running back before that. So I think those guys deserve credit. I already said Miles Jack, I thought played very well. He's your LB1 with no doubt. He's going to be an important player in this defense. I'll also say DeMarvin Leal. He did have a sack to his name. He had another pressure that I thought was really good. But if you go back and you go look, if you're a film junkie and you like to go back and look at games, go back and look at some of those plays that he made. Go back and look at how he made them. And it's the hands. It's what I was telling you in camp, the things that I'm seeing. He's not just hitting you with one move. He has several different moves that he uses. He still hasn't polished all of them. They're still kind of in the works. But you see the active wheels are turning in his head where he's reacting. He has instincts. He's doing the things that you want him to do to beat guys in front of him. Granted, against third stringers, no doubt about that. He's not up there in the first string world. I'm not saying he's ready for that. But he is showing the tools that you'd want out of a 3rd-round guy to be showing at this stage of his career as a rookie. Other guys I thought looked better than I thought. I'll go back and say the safeties because I said the safeties played a very good game last night, but holy smokes, they played a very good game. Terrell Edmonds, 5 tackles flying all over the place and covering well. He was never targeted in this game. And when I looked at it, I was like, that can't be right. And then I watched the game and I was like, oh, he was never targeted in this game. And this is one thing that I say all the time for Terrell Edmonds. A lot of people are mad because he's not, the 1st-round pick at number 18 that the Steelers overreached for him, blah, 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 blah. I've said for years, the man's a solid safety. And you can't afford to pay for superstar strong safety when you're playing Minkah Fitzpatrick superstar free safety money. If you could keep him around, though, to be a good partner, He's a great role player. He'll get those jobs done. He'll help against the run. He'll make it tough to pass against him. He'll be in the area on his assignment. He'll communicate. You'll never have to question if he's in the right spot. That's who Terrell Edmunds is. And DeMonte KZ, also same sort of deal. Less in the box, but made tackles when he was in open space, which was a major criticism of him coming into this year. Is in place and is giving them the flexibility to show different things. There was one play that was a third down where Trevor Lawrence ended up throwing the ball away. And it was a play where the Steelers showed cover 2. And I talked about this. You can go back to the safety episode and see me break this down. I talked about this, but they showed cover 2 with Edmunds and Fitzpatrick as your 2 high safeties. Then as the game as the play starts to happen, Edmunds was the one who dropped back over the middle, and it was Minkah who came down inside, and that gave the Steelers just enough to show, okay, wait a minute. Trevor Lawrence thinking, oh wait, this isn't cover 2 zone. Crap, this is cover 1. It's throw over here, and then he missed because he was rushed. Those are the things that I think the safety, a really good veteran safety group can do, because they're going to communicate on a high level. And again, this is just the preseason. As these guys play during the season, they're going to get sharper, they're going to get better, and there's going to be more intense situations. That was just preseason Trevor Lawrence in the first half. Imagine regular season Trevor Lawrence, games on the line and the pressure's on and he has to deliver in a big moment. And there's no live for tomorrow. It's no throwaway and it's okay. You got to make the throw or you lose. And he makes a really desperate throw. And that desperate throw is within the grasp or in the range of Minkah Fitzpatrick. And we've all seen what Minkah Fitzpatrick can do when the ball is in his range. I think the safeties are looking good. So those are guys that I thought looked better. Then I'll also say Gennard Avery. There were some times I thought he gave up contain a little too early, but all in all, I actually did like what he brought to the edge out there. I think that he's doing better than I think a lot of people were giving him credit for. But still, a lot of work to do. We still need to see this defensive line be better against the run, because the numbers that they gave up, 29 on 8 carries to Travis Etienne, not all that terrible when you look at it. I mean, that's actually not that bad. But the fact that the Jaguars were 50% on third down, that wasn't something that you wanted to see. They got, they had 97 yards on the ground, 3.2 yards per carry. That's like acceptable, but you wanted it to be better. You want this defense to be elite. And again, it's going to take time to get there. But I do think that there's more hope to the run defense than what some people thought after the first week of the preseason. We're out of time here. We got to end it, but I want to let you know we got a long week. We got a good long week ahead of us. Steelers return to practice on Monday. Today at their training facility. I'll be there. Don't worry about it. We'll be getting to talk to some of these guys. It's going to be a fun week ahead of us. We're going to have guests rolling back in, and then preseason one more time before it starts to get real. Again, thanks for checking out the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. If you want to help out with the show, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, like the show, and then subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. If you want to support the show even more, go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment. You do both at the same time, and you get a special shout out at the end of the show. Like this person, we have Varian from Omaha, Nebraska, who says, love the show, 5 stars. I love listening to Chris Carter host the show, and I really enjoy the guests that he brings on. Great insight on what is going on with the Steelers. It's one of my first listens every morning. Keep it up. Thanks so much, Varian. We will keep it up, and we'll be back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.